Hey, thanks for tuning in. Anthony Lewis has again joined me, and I'm just glad that Anthony is keeping up with my obsession to primary directions and joining me every time. So,
Mhm.
thank you so much, Anthony. And today, I think we are going to talk about relocation in primary directions.
Right. It's always a pleasure to be here. So, shall we get started? Because I know we're a little pressed for time today.
Sure, please.
Um, Let me do this. Let me open my slides.
But before that, I just wanted to kind of tell everyone that just go back and visit a few videos that we did on primary directions, and that I'd also surely recommend the videos that you did on Levi Kozan's channel, our mutual friend, uh,
Hmm.
and I think both the videos on both the channels on primary directions are really complementary to each other, and anyone who is new to this technique can actually watch. I think there is already almost 7 or 8 videos on primary directions, which will give everyone a really good establishment or a foundation of the technique. So, so I really kind of recommend everyone to go back and check the older videos if they have not.
Yeah, and I'm going to repeat a little today, so there'll be some continuity.
Sure.
Okay, so shall we start?
Yeah, please.
Share screen and share. Okay, can you see my slides here?
Yes, yes, it's there.
And they're big enough. I think I'll leave them this way that I can see the side.
Yeah.
So what I hope to do today is review a little about primary directions, and show how they relate to what we normally think of as relocation charts on the surface of the Earth.
Mhm.
And I'm going to use two examples, Sharon Tate, which we've discussed before,
Sure.
and Rajiv Gandhi, uh,
Yeah.
because they show different principles.
Sure.
And in the case of Sharon Tate, we're going to look at her directed ascendant and use oblique ascension.
Okay.
Okay. And an important principle is that the Earth turns from west to east. So things in the sky appear to rise in the east, culminate, and set in the west.
Mm.
And when the points in the sky align with the natal points, we say they are conjunct by primary direction, meaning really they're aligned by primary direction.
Sure.
They have the same relationship to the horizon and the mid-heaven, the meridian line, as did the natal point.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. So this just says what I just said.
Sure.
The Earth rotates from west to east. The sky appears to rotate from
East to
east to
west.
west. And it makes a complete circle every 24 hours. The Earth does.
Yeah.
And so each hour is 1/24th of the rotation of the Earth, or 15 degrees, because there's 360 degrees in a circle.
Mm.
And the idea Ptolemy had was each degree on the equator, that as the Earth rotates, we can equate to 1 year of life. So 15 degrees would be 15 years of life, and that would correspond to the rotation of the Earth for the first hour after birth.
Sure.
Okay, so interrupt me at any time if I say something doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Next slide. Now, our convention, the modern convention, is to measure time and longitude from the prime meridian, which is the meridian that goes through Greenwich, England.
Mm.
And that's a worldwide convention. We all agree that our reference line here is the prime meridian through Greenwich, England. And
Mm.
that's our 0 point on the Earth. And we measure times in terms of universal time is time at the Greenwich meridian. So you're over here in India, you're what, about six and a half hours from Greenwich?
5.5 hours.
5.5 hours, okay. So 5.5 hours would be 5.5 times 15 degrees, whatever that is. It's about 80 degrees.
Mm.
And I'm over here. You can't see it in the United States. I'm about 73 degrees in the other direction.
Mm.
Okay. Or which is about 5 hours in the other direction. So I'm 5 hours this way, you're 5.5 hours this way,
Mm.
which means we are 10.5 hours apart
Sure.
in terms of time zones.
Yes.
Okay. This is just illustrating the same thing. Here's the prime meridian through Greenwich, England. We can go in an eastward direction or in a westward direction. Time is earlier in this direction. Time is later in this direction. Okay. So I'm at an earlier time than you are with reference to the Greenwich meridian.
Mm.
Okay. I'm 5 hours earlier. You're 5.5 hours later than the time in England. Clear or no?
Yeah, sure.
And as you can see, the meridians on the equator match up to degrees on the equator. And so we can convert the time difference to degrees on the equator, which are degrees of right ascension.
Sure.
And the idea Ptolemy had was each degree of right ascension is a year of life. So for instance, if we're here at 0 and I go 10 degrees on the equator to the east, this line here would correspond to my chart at 10 years of age.
Sure.
This meridian here, my chart at 20 years of age, 30 years of age, 40 years of age. So a very simple way to find the directed chart, primary directed chart, is simply to add the number of degrees on the equator that corresponds to your age to your birth longitude.
Mm.
That clear or no?
No, that makes sense. Yes, I think we have spoke about this many times. So
but it gives you a very easy way if in your software to just calculate the directed chart. So let me do another example. Suppose somebody is born here in the United States in Florida, which is 80 degrees west of the prime meridian. So at age, say 20, we go 80, 70, 60, their chart, if you calculate it along this meridian, you'd have their primary directed chart at age 20. Along this meridian, their primary directed chart at age 30. Along this meridian, the primary directed chart at age 40, at age 50, at age 60, at age 70, at age 80. So if I want to know what does their primary directed chart look like at age 80, I would simply take their birth longitude, add 80 to it, and recalculate the chart, leaving all the other data the same.
Sure. And I think that's one of the easiest ways of working with primary directions, because you can we can just do it by it's a mental calculation, and we can kind of make out how.
And then you plug it into your software, but you only have to change the one value. You just add your age to the longitude of birth, and that gives you your primary directed longitude for the new chart. Let the software do the calculation. You have its primary directed chart. I'll show you that when we get to further in the slides. This is saying the same thing. So we're going to keep the birth data the same, which means we keep the latitude of birth the same. So this person in Florida, we're going to keep this on this line of latitude, but we'll recalculate the chart here for North Africa with the same birth data. And that will tell us what their primary directed chart will look like when they're 80 years old, because there's 80 degrees from here to here. Okay. And so this just summarizes what I said. For each equatorial degree, we have a year of life. The equatorial degrees correspond to degrees of longitude on the equator. You add the number of degrees that correspond to your age to the birth longitude and generate a directed chart. Okay. So we've already talked about Sharon Tate, but let's do it once again.
Sure.
She was murdered by the Manson family. She was pregnant at the time, so she was stabbed to death August 9th, very early in the morning, 1969. And this is her birth chart from Astro Databank. And when we studied the primary directions before, we saw that Mars here, by primary direction, the horizon, the descendant line, moved. She died at age 26 and I think 0.5 years old or so. That this descendant by primary direction arrived at and conjoined Mars at that age. And that seemed fitting for a person being stabbed to death. Mars is, it can be
surgical stuff.
killings and
killing.
so on.
Yeah, sure.
And we also found that Pluto was important, and Pluto got activated at that time of her life by what we call distribution. And I will show, this is repetition. So we looked at her distributions, which is directing the terms of the signs toward the ascendant after birth. And so the term of Saturn when she was murdered was on the ascendant, and the ascendant had recently gone over the conjunction to Pluto. So Pluto and Saturn were very active in the time of her murder. Okay. This is her birth chart. So to show you what I'm talking about, at age 26, this area of her chart by primary direction had risen to the horizon, the Saturn term. Pluto had risen to the horizon before that, but was still active because it's the closest aspect to the ascendant, to this term. So Pluto and Saturn were both active. And what we're concerned about is when will the descendant arrive at Mars? And that's going to arrive around age 26 as well. So she's in a danger period here.
Sure.
And at the time of her murder, primary directed descendant conjoined with her Mars. So this had actually reached this point in her natal chart. Because the chart after birth, everything moves clockwise. So this point here, slowly moving here, it gets here at age 26 at the rate of 1 degree of right ascension per year on the midheaven. So Mars essentially becomes angular, and it's on the 7th cusp. And the 7th cusp has a symbolism of sunset, and it's linked to death for that reason. I think in Vedic astrology, it's also linked to death.
Most of the traditional forms of astrology associate 7th house with death.
So her sunset gets linked to the planet Mars, and she's stabbed by the Manson family. And this is the same chart with the inner chart being her natal chart. And here the directed chart, everything had moved clockwise so that the ascendant descendant axis is on the planet Mars.
Exactly, almost close to Mars, yes.
In August of 69. Okay. And this, when we calculate the primaries by computer, this is the list that it generates. I generated this in Janus software. And as you can see, this year, 1969, very prominent, the opposition of the ascendant, which is the descendant, comes to Mars. And the opposition of Mars, which is the other side, has risen to the ascendant in this period from February to June. This is at the Nibod rate. And it's important to remember that this gives us a time period that's not exact. So if this covers all of 1969, she's at risk. Okay. Now, to show you the relocated chart, this will take a little explanation.
Okay.
This is a world map. And what the software does is it takes key points in her birth chart and maps them onto the map of the world. So let's start with this line. This line across is the equator. This is true for everybody. The equator goes across here. And this is this curved line that looks like a sine curve. This is her, this is, wait. This sign here. This is the ecliptic. This is the path of the sun.
Mm.
And then she's born over here in the United States. She's born with the sun in the sort of on the western horizon. It's about to set.
Mm.
So that her ascendant is way across the world in Africa.
Okay.
Her horizon is here. This line is her horizon line. Her horizon goes to North Africa here. This line, the software calculates for, fortunately. This is the first house cusp, and it varies depending on the latitude of her birth. So it's this curved line. And the ascendant is the point where the horizon crosses the ecliptic. Well, as you can see, the ecliptic is going here through Africa. Her horizon is also going through Africa. This point here is her ascendant.
Okay.
Right there. That's where her ascendant is. And I also had the software map where Mars is in her chart. The meridian of Mars goes right here through the tip of Africa.
Okay.
And so we're concerned, when will Mars line up with the ascendant? Well, it's going to have to move this distance right here. And I'll show that in another slide. And it turns out that distance, if we measure it on the equator, it's a little over 26 degrees. So it matches 26 years of life. Okay. And so this is simply showing on the map what we would do if we added 26 to her birth longitude. It would move Mars over to her ascendant, and it would be right on the horizon.
Okay.
Okay. Questions about this map? It can be a little confusing when you first look at it.
Yeah, it was difficult for me to kind of make out where the cursor was. So,
yeah.
So
where the what was? I didn't.
The cursor, the mouse cursor.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I have, let's see, we just did this one. This might be, I blew up Africa to make it clearer.
Oh, okay.
So this line here is her birth latitude. She's born at latitude almost 33 north. So her birth chart lies along this latitude. And her ascendant is going to be where her horizon, which is this line, crosses the ecliptic right here. And I do a vertical line down through her ascendant, and measuring it in the software, I got about 10 east. 10 east of Greenwich. And then Mars, the meridian that goes through the body of Mars, goes to the tip of Africa, was about 16 and a half west. So from 10 to Greenwich is 10 degrees. And then from Greenwich west to 16 and a half is about 26 and a half degrees if we add the two together. So this indicates Mars connected to her horizon or her ascendant or descendant at about 26 and a half. I think it came out to about 26.7 if you did it more closely. And I think she was 26.5 or 6 when she died. So it's very close.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. And so she died, this is just repeating it, when she was 26.54 years old. That's when this got directed to here.
Oh.
This just showed the same thing on her chart that we saw in the previous figure. This is her birth chart.
Sure.
And so from here to here on the equator is about 26.7 degrees. And she died at 26.54 years of age.
Okay.
So very, very close timing. All right. So now the point of all this is, if you have software, this is her birth data. She's born in Dallas, Texas. And all I did was take the longitude of Dallas and add the time of the age at birth to that, and that gave me 123 West 20 as the new longitude, and recalculated the chart to get the directed chart for that age.
Okay.
And this is what it looks like. So if we direct her chart to 26.54 years, we see Mars is just about conjunct the descendant.
Ah,
And this is her primary directed birth chart to this age, or adding this number of degrees along the equator to the longitude.
okay.
So it's a very simple way to calculate a primary directed chart. And the other advantage is, since traditionally we didn't change the positions of any of the birth planets, the positions all stay exactly the same, because we're not changing anything except where on Earth we're calculating the chart.
Mm. Yeah, we're just working with the horizons, and we are not directing any
Yeah.
particular planet.
Right. So we're not progressing any of these are exactly the birth positions. I can hear the sun at birth is, let's do the moon. That's a better measure.
Okay.
The moon is at 12:30 of Virgo. If we go to the birth chart, the moon is at 12:30 of Virgo.
Mm.
All we've done is change the longitude of the chart, kept the birth data identical.
Sure.
So this is the birth chart. This is the directed chart. Okay, so that's example one.
Okay.
Questions about it, or was it clear? Or
Yeah, this was great.
all right, now let's do Rajiv Gandhi. I picked him because he's from India.
Okay. Yeah, and it's a
Actually, he was killed right near where you live, I think, right?
yeah, about 50 kilometers away from where I live.
Yeah. So he's born in 1944.
Mm.
And I wanted to look at, this is a very dramatic event. He was campaigning, and somebody with a bomb blew up the bomb as he leaned over to, I guess, talk to her, and it was instantaneous death.
Yes.
He was 46.75 years at his death.
Mm.
So this should show up in his primary directions.
Okay.
Whoops. Okay. This is his birth chart. It's a little bit busy, but he's got everything practically on the left side of the chart, all clustered in here. And I want to look at his distributions, meaning here's his ascendant. This is his horizon, 8 of Virgo.
Mm.
I've used the tropical zodiac here. I mean, you can do this with the sidereal as well.
Mm.
I'm just used to the tropical, so I use it.
Okay.
So all of these planets are going to rise here at some time during his life. And when he's 46 years old, probably something down here, maybe in Scorpio, is going to rise to the ascendant. And so we're interested in what part of the chart will be on the ascendant at age 46. That's what the distributions are by primary direction.
Good.
So here we have, at age 45, Venus. Libra has come up to the ascendant, and the Venus term of Libra is on the ascendant. And the most recent aspect to the ascendant was a square from Saturn. Okay. And so this is what I'm interested in. What is Venus doing in his birth chart, and what is Saturn doing, and what is a square of Saturn doing? Because this is what's active at the time of his death. A square from Saturn and the Venus term. So in this chart, this is the area that came to the ascendant at age 46, the Venus term of Libra. And Saturn here, its square is here, and that had passed the ascendant but was still active because no other aspect had become active in that intervening period. Having the square of Saturn to your ascendant active is usually a stressful time. And why would Venus be stressful? Let's see, what is Venus? Well, Venus is the ruler of his second house. So it has the significance of potential death, right?
Sure, yes.
As a ruler of his second.
Yeah, that's
Venus also rules the ninth. I'm not sure. Maybe.
but Venus is Venus is the ruler of second house, which is 12th from the third, because third is also considered to be one of the houses of longevity. So
Mhm,
Venus is potentially capable of becoming a killer planet, but
mhm.
Venus also rules the ninth house, the greatest trine of the chart. So
Yeah.
uh, I think uh, mm,
So by distributions, you could say this will be a stressful period for him, right?
uh,
At least with the
yeah,
square Saturn
Saturn
active
square is really is.
and the Venus term active.
Mm,
Uh, okay. Now, if I look at the primary directions, he died in May of 1991. So I put a line through May of 1991.
okay.
The closest aspects to that, I'm using, I'm not sure whether I'm using Nibod or I think I'm using the midpoint of Ptolemy and Nibod, which I like here.
Okay.
The square of Pluto comes to Mars during this period, May and June.
Okay.
That's a very stressful aspect, which could indicate a violent explosion.
Mm.
Pluto Mars.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's no need of explanation for that.
yeah, symbolically, Pluto is intense energy. It's related to atomic power. And Mars, of course, is an explosive planet. And
Yeah.
when they're related by square. So I want to go back to the chart now and look at Pluto and Mars and see how they relate to his. Let's do this chart here. Well,
Okay.
he has Pluto here in his 12th house, actually right at the 12th cusp.
Mm.
So Pluto is powerfully conditioned. I'm using Placidus houses
Mm.
to the 12th house.
Sure.
And Mars rules his 8th house, which, at least
Yeah.
in Western, it could be a planet of death. And
Yeah.
the square of Pluto would be Pluto's at 8 of Leo, so its square is at 8 of Scorpio,
Mm.
uh, which interestingly is right at the Placidus cusp of the 3rd house, right? 1, 2,
Yeah.
3.
Third house.
And so this square, which I didn't draw in, is going to rise up and join with Mars the month, really the month that he is killed by a bomb. Now, what's interesting is that these are intermediate. This primary direction does not involve the ascendant. It does not involve the midheaven. So we can't calculate it in an oblique ascension, which we would do for the ascendant. We can't really calculate right ascension if it were a direction to the midheaven. We have to use some intermediate method. And what Ptolemy said you do is you look at proportions so that when Mars is sort of a certain distance from the end of the 1st house, so Ptolemy would say when the square of Pluto gets up here and is an equivalent distance from the end of the 1st house, we'll have a conjunction. I don't know if that's clear, but
No,
that's, yeah,
that's
okay.
good.
So let's see if we can see that.
These.
Oh, this is just a summary. The square of Pluto conjoined the 8th ruler Mars, the month he died. The converse directed ascendant ruler Mercury conjoined the square of Pluto. I'll have to go back and show that. And then in February, Mars will conjoin Pluto. Let's go back and look at the list. Sorry. The converse, Mercury goes to the square of Pluto. There should be a Mercury to the square of Pluto. Here it is, okay.
Sure.
This is February the following year. But it also occurred in February of the previous year. So this is kind of like he's hemmed in between a Mercury square Pluto between February of 91 and February of 92.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah,
it's sort of like being hemmed in between two malefics.
sure. Yeah.
And what's the midpoint February to February? February is the second month, so 2 plus 6 is 8.
Yeah,
That would be the summer.
it's,
It would be the midpoint.
mm,
But he starts the year with Mercury square Pluto, and then the following year we have the Mercury square Pluto again. I think that was the point I was making. If we
okay.
look at the chart, here's Mercury. Mercury is his ascendant ruler. And by converse direction, meaning we're going to let the how are we going to do this? I'm
Good.
getting
The,
I'm
the
confused.
converse directions.
Basically, we instead of having Mercury move this way, we imagine Pluto moving this way, and so Pluto would get to the square of this would be 24 of Gemini. That would be the converse.
Mm.
And it was Pluto at age 46 would be up here at about 24 of Gemini, and that would be squaring the birth Mercury, which rules his ascendant.
Ah, okay,
So,
that's
so we
significant.
have a powerful Pluto influence, and Pluto, it has a very strong 12th house influence, and it's kind of raw power that can explode. And it's affecting his ascendant ruler and affecting Mars, which is his 8th ruler. So he is at risk.
Sure.
Okay. So let me go through this because this is just showing the same things again that we said.
Mm.
In his natal chart, the square Pluto lies at 8 Scorpio down here. At age 46, it reaches this point up here. And then here's Pluto, there's a square, and it's advancing by primary direction this way. And when it reaches here, the Mars, we have the bomb blast. And I'm using the midpoint of Ptolemy and Nibod.
Okay.
Okay. Now, to show the proportional semi-arc, let me go to the next slide. Da-da-da. So here is his parts of his chart I mapped onto India and surrounding area.
Okay.
So again, this is the ecliptic. This is the equator. And what I did was this line here goes through Pluto. This line here goes through the square of Mars.
Mm.
Here's the square of Pluto. And here's Mars again.
Okay.
No, here's not Mars again. This is Mars, the meridian that goes through Mars. And so what I'm interested in is, here's the planet Mars, and I want to know when in his life will the planet Mars join with the location on Earth where the square Pluto would be found if we did the line of longitude through the square Pluto. And so down here I measured, this is the equator down here. From here to here is about 42 degrees on the equator. But that would be measuring in right ascension. Remember, because we're intermediate, it can't be right ascension.
Mm.
If we measured on the ecliptic, which is the circle, we'd have this point here, here's the ecliptic, up to here. And I think when I measured that, it wasn't the 46 either, but we wouldn't expect it to be.
Yeah.
Because we're going to look at proportions, but it at least gives us a ballpark that probably sometime in his 40s, Mars will reach the square of Pluto. But to use Ptolemy's method, we have to do this. I took his birth chart which is this, right? The 8 of Virgo rising. I kept everything the same, but I added 46.75 degrees to the longitude of his birth.
Okay.
Okay. So, and that put it at 119 East 35 and recalculated the chart. So all of these natal positions have the same value.
Sure.
What's changed is the ascendant and midheaven and the house cusps. And so our question is, here's Pluto at 8 of Leo as it was before. Here's the square of Pluto. When does this square of Pluto, this little arrow here, get to the same point in the first Placidus house that Mars occupied proportionally when he was born? Okay.
Okay. That's
Okay. So let me go back to the birth chart. Here's Mars. And you can see using Placidus houses, which are 2 planetary hours wide, he has 8 degrees rising. And this is almost 7 degrees of Libra. So it's 30, 29 degrees wide. Is that right?
No, it's 30. Yeah, I think 29 degrees.
Yeah. 8 to 7 is about 29 degrees. And Mars is at 24 here. So 24 to a Virgo to 30 of Virgo would be 6. And 6 plus 7 would be about 13.
13
I think I
degrees.
calculated the next slide. Here's the directed chart to the time of death. And so here, I cast Gandhi's chart for the new longitude at the age 46.75. The square of Pluto is now in the position of natal Mars. The square of Pluto, if I did it here, is 12.75 degrees above this line, which is 43% of the house width. And if I did the same for Mars, natal Mars is 12.4 degrees. Pluto was 12.75 degrees above this cusp. And and the house width is 28.65 degrees. The point is they're both 43 degrees above, 43% of the distance. It's a proportional equivalence. Let me repeat
43% of the house. Okay.
Here's the natal chart. When we calculate how far above the second cusp is Mars in this first house, it's 43% of the way above.
Okay.
When we do the same for the square of Pluto, it's also 43% of the way from here to here. And so they're proportionately at the same point, even though they're not numerically, right?
Sure, yeah.
This is 12.75 from here to here degrees, and Mars is 12.4. Close, but the proportion is exactly the same. And that's what Ptolemy said he's going to call a conjunction or an alignment. And that's when the bomb went off. So we're not using right ascension. We're not using oblique ascension. We're using the proportional distance along its semi-arc.
Okay.
And I did that within the house itself. You could do it. If we did it from here to here, they'd also be proportionately along their semi-arc the same way.
Okay.
So those were the slides I prepared. And
okay.
my goal was to show this very simple method. You just add the age at birth, which you convert to a degree for each year, to the longitude of birth to generate the directed chart for that age. And that's based on the whole idea of relocation charts and mapping the chart onto the Earth and looking where the various planets are and the relation with each other.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
So that's my slides. We could stop here unless you have questions or.
I think it was, I never kind of knew this thing, and it was very new and interesting as well. So maybe once the video is done rendering, I'll just go back and watch it again and see
Yeah, it's
some of
something you
those
probably
things
have to
that
watch
flew
it
over my head.
a couple times to see
Yes,
how it all plays out.
sure. Usually, because um, usually when we do something, I'm kind of aware of what you say, but this time there were things that kind of flew over my head, and I had to kind of. I was lagging a bit, so I'm sure I have to just go back and revisit the video. So
But if
yeah,
there's something that confused you, I can just repeat it or go over it.
no, I think it was fine. It's just that I have to kind of get some clarity over it by watching it again. So
Mm-hmm.
you are perfect. So
Yeah. Relocate, it's a fascinating topic, the relocation, the astrocartography, and the various ways of mapping the chart onto the surface of the Earth.
yeah, I've not worked with it, but I've seen people work with it, and someone has actually given me an astrocartography reading almost. So it's very fascinating to kind of work with the relocation chart. But personally, I have not worked with the relocation chart so far. So it's going to be an experiment for me.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so I think if that's the end of this video,
Yeah.
we'll get back with yet another primary directions if possible. And
Yeah, it's just another way to look at primary directions.
okay, sure. I mean, even I've been working with primary directions has been a very is becoming a very integral part of my astrology because it's just easy to calculate at which age the ascendant is moving into which bounds and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get used to it, and once we know that, we probably don't need any softwares or something like that, and we can easily kind of, because we remember the birth points, so it's just that we need to kind of visualize ourselves how things are moving.
Well, the software
And
helps you pinpoint the dates, I think.
exactly, yes, that's
Yeah.
that's where the software really works. Yes, sure. Okay, I think that
Okay.
pretty much brings us
So
towards
why
the
don't we
end.
stop this video here? People probably have to watch it a couple times
Oh, sure, yes,
to get it, but
yeah. So, yeah, okay, thank you so much. And
okay, good.
yeah.